take it back to 95. Before we had this drama in our lives, just staring at the screen.
Hey, what's going on everyone? Marcus Philly here with Functional Bodybuilding. Today, I'm talking about barbells within training. How can you take new principles and bring them into your training experience to take the simple exercises that are performed with the barbell and add just a slight amount of variation to it to enhance your training experience, keep it extremely interesting and varied, and continue to progress without just having to add more load to the bar. Check out these 5 principles of functional bodybuilding to upgrade your barbell training. Okay, so not a week goes by when I don't get the comment, Marcus, I've hit a plateau, or Marcus, I'm getting a little bored and stale with my training. How do I spice it up a little bit? Here's one thing you gotta understand. Spicing up your training and making it more interesting, while it's a great way to overcome the boredom of finding yourself doing the same thing every single day, it's not necessarily going to equate to better progress or moving you closer to your goals. This is a 2-part problem. Number 1, you have to be consistent enough with your training to actually see results. That requires you enjoying what you're doing, having fun with it, and being dedicated and devoted to doing it day after day after day. If you're bored, you're not going to be consistent. But number 2, it takes more than just consistency. It takes thoughtful training principles that progress you over time. Progressive overload is the concept that has to be implemented within your training practices if you're going to actually see yourself get stronger, lose body fat, and improve your athletic performance. So having a combination of variety and progressive overload principles is what makes functional bodybuilding so unique and why so many of our customers have stuck with us for a long time. You got to keep it interesting and you got to keep it progressive in nature. And so these 5 training tips are how we take some very simple but effective training variances, bring them to traditional weight training principles like the barbell, and move you further forward within your training. So to get things started, we're going to look at how we implement bands with barbell training. Specifically, we're going to look at the futures method with band resistance training on the barbell. Okay, the futures method, as the name implies, is a banded exercise variance that allows you to experience what a weight might feel like that you're going to lift in the future. It's essentially a way of using bands to assist your lifting, not resist your lifting. The more typical variation we see with band resistance training is that bands are added to your weight to make it harder as you move through a repetition range. In this example, the futures method, we're going to show you a bench press and a deadlift. It's going to be set up in such a way that as you move through the range of motion on the concentric lift, the exercise is actually starting out relatively easy at the bottom and it gets a little bit harder at the top. So what you get is you get the most assistance when the weight is at its heaviest or in its least advantageous mechanical position. So for people in the bench press, that's typically at the bottom of the bench press. This is where it's heaviest and hardest to produce force. When you get closer to lockout, people tend to be a little stronger. Similarly with the deadlift, at the bottom or the first initial pull off the ground, the weight feels heaviest for people. So we assist at the bottom of the deadlift, and as you reach the top or lockout, the weight gets heavier. So again, with the futures method and with this banded assistance method, what you're allowing yourself to do is be stronger in the positions where your body is mechanically weak. You have more assistance. As you get closer to positions where you're mechanically stronger, advantageous positions like when the bar is just above your knee in a deadlift, or when you're reaching that 90-degree position closer to lockout in the bench press, the assistance from the band is much less, so you're gonna have to work harder. Again, you could load up the barbell in the deadlift, for example, with 315 pounds, and with the assistance of these bands, maybe it's around 100 pounds of assistance, you feel like you're lifting only 215 pounds off the floor. But at the top, you start to feel more and more percentage of that whole entire 315 pound weight, which gives you, again, a glimpse in the future of what you're going to be able to lift as you follow these progressive overload principles over time. So give the Futures method a try with your training and your barbell training in the coming weeks, and let me know how it goes. Okay, coming in at number 2, the second way that we use barbells to vary our training is by taking that barbell and implementing landmine exercises. The landmine is essentially a way of training where you put the barbell in one fixed position at one end, and then the other end is free to move in really 360 degrees of rotation. Now, there are specific training equipment tools that allow you to fix that barbell into a static position on one end that's free to rotate. These are landmine attachments, joystick attachments. They're called a lot of different things at different equipment providers. I use the joystick from Eleiko, and what it allows me to do is have some versatility in where I move this thing around the room. But it's not essential that you have an actual landmine or a joystick in order to appreciate this way of using the training implement the barbell. You can actually just take that barbell and shove it in the corner of any room or any fixed object. It could be 2 heavy dumbbells that you wedge it in between. What's the value of using a landmine as a loading implement? Well, now you've taken a barbell, which is traditionally something that's used in bilateral exercises where you're going to grab it on both hands, right hand, left hand, and you're going to be doing things symmetrically. When you're using a landmine, you get a ton of value out of being able to do unilateral exercises, rotational exercises, and taking that loading implement and moving it all around your body within a single exercise. So I'm going to show you a couple examples of how we use the landmine in different types of loading positions and rotational planes right now. Okay, the first exercise that you're seeing with the landmine is called the low handle split squat. This one's pretty straightforward, but what it's demonstrating is that you can actually overload this particular loading implement by holding it low and performing a very standard, simple, static exercise like the split squat. But you're getting unilateral loading, so one side is holding all of the weight. You can do split stance, you can do a variety of different foot positions to train one leg at a time. That's why I love the landmine, is that it's super easy to load up and it gives you a little bit of added stability when you're doing exercises that require balance like the split squat in order to be able to produce more force, to stay stable, and to still train one side at a time. The second exercise you're going to see me doing is called a tall kneeling goblet press out. Now this is really highlighting what's great about the landmine when it comes to rotational training. I can stay in a fixed position, but because that landmine moves in 360 degrees of rotation, I can twist and turn my body, and I can create a loading pattern that actually gets me to work in the transverse plane more than I would be able to with a traditional barbell in traditional training exercises. So introducing the landmine into your training is going to give you access to a tremendous amount of rotational strength, and all you need again is a barbell and a fixed position to place that end. Okay, number 3, coming in number 3 for the landmine exercise, this is called a rotational clean and press. What I really love about this exercise is that it takes advantage of some really dynamic movements, something that's a little bit challenging for you, for your brain, for your coordination, gets again that rotational strength, and it's also a terrific core exercise, as well as those of you out there who love Olympic lifting, but the repetition of doing the clean and jerk and the snatch week after week after week can get a little bit tiresome, or you can burn out on it. So the rotational clean and press, it's a straightforward exercise from the outside looking in, but once you actually get into the nuances of it, you're going to start to feel your obliques working, you're going to start to feel your low back working, you're going to start to feel your shoulders working. There's a lot of different elements that are actually going on, so take some time to learn this one and implement it in your training this week. All right, number 3, we're going to be talking about something called dynamic loading. That's the term that I've used for this over the years. And essentially what it is we're taking the barbell, and instead of putting plates on the barbell for loading, we're going to hang something like a plate or a kettlebell or even a dumbbell onto that barbell in order to create something that feels a little bit more unstable and dynamic. Now, there are training tools out there called the earthquake bar, which is designed to create a barbell scenario that is shaky, something that feels like an earthquake in your hands while you're doing exercises. Why is that something that you might be interested in? Well, dynamic loading on the barbell is a great way to introduce some instability. Instability means that you're going to have to, within your shoulders or within your hips or within your core and your trunk, you're going to have to provide the stability for that weight. And what that ends up doing is it's going to decrease the total amount of load that you're going to be lifting in any given exercise. This is going to ask a lot of your hips and your shoulders for stability. That means small muscles within the shoulder blades and within the hips are going to be working a lot more than they would with a traditional barbell loaded with plates. Try the dynamic loading in your training. You can implement it once, even twice a week for a period of 3 to 4 weeks to get out of that routine that you've been in for weeks and months on end. This will help elevate your ability to control weight when you go back to training discs on top of a traditional barbell. Give these two a try. Let me know how they go. All right, number 4 today. It's all about your grip. How do you hold on to the barbell? Well, in most exercises, the traditional grip is a pronated hands, palms over the top of the bar. But if you change the way you hold a barbell, you can get an entirely new stimulus out of your training. So what are the examples that I'm going to show you today? Well, one of the most common ways that we see this done is through going and taking a pronated grip and turning it into a supinated grip. So I'm going to show you a supinated bench press. This is something that most people have never even considered doing. You bench press over and over again with the same grip, just like this. But if you turn your hands around and you go to a supinated grip, you're going to engage your back muscles, your lats, your shoulder blades, and your biceps in a whole new way. So remember, the take-home concept here is not, oh, I need to do supinated bench press. The take-home concept is, have I considered changing my grip on the barbell and starting my progressive overload cycle from the ground up? So you've just been doing 3 months of bench pressing and building, and you see you're starting to stall out. You start over with a new cycle of supinated bench press. You go back to your beginning weights or even lighter, and then you progress through that. So the supinated bench press is a perfect example. Another great example that I have used is with barbell curls. A barbell curl with a supinated grip to just do, a traditional curl can be changed in these ways. Have you considered using a mixed grip? A mixed grip on the curl provides a unilateral stimulus on one bicep and one forearm. This is a great way to vary your training. So mixing the grip in movements like the bicep curl could add some variance and again, help you to restart the progressive overload cycle that you've been in. Another way that I love to use grip placement on the bar is with offset grips. Okay, so an offset grip would be where one hand goes in the middle of the bar and the other hand goes off to the left. So now you're actually shifting your total weight more towards one side of the barbell than the other. And what that means is that as you lift that bar in whatever movement or whatever exercise you're doing, one side of the bar is going to be heavier than the other. What is that actually going to do for you? Well, that's going to make your brain have to work harder to stabilize, to produce force on one side, to balance. And that new training principle or that new training stimulus is going to allow you to start the progressive overload cycle again and see yourself build over the course of many weeks to come. Now, when you're doing offset grips, it's always important to balance it by using both sides of the bar. So the example I'm going to show you is actually an offset grip deadlift. If I offset to one side, maybe my right side's going to have to pull harder. I'm going to have to balance my grip by using my shoulders and stabilizing with my shoulders. And so I might do that for 5 repetitions and then come over to the other side of the bar and do it again for 5 repetitions on the other side so that I remain balanced. Anytime you're changing something like grip and you're doing something that's very foreign to you, it's always a good idea to start relatively light with weight. You do not want to think, oh, well, I usually deadlift 250 pounds, so I'll just deadlift 250 pounds with an offset grip or a mixed grip or a supinated grip. That would be a mistake. Remember, this is a new training stimulus to you, so go ahead and go all the way back down. Start with something that's relatively light for you, and then build your way back up. Let me know how these principles go. We'll be back with episode number 5. All right, tip number 5, change your base of support. What does that even mean? Well, it means that what you are sitting on or standing on is actually the base that you're supported on while you're doing your exercises. And now standing and seated barbell exercises are the traditional methods for positioning your base. You can either lay on a bench and press, you can sit on a bench and press, or you can stand and press. But I'm here to introduce 2 other concepts that you could use as well. How about kneeling positions? There's half kneeling and tall kneeling. So we're gonna look at the press today, and you can see me doing a barbell press in a half kneeling position, as well as a tall kneeling position. Kneeling positions are really unique in how they ask your core and your hips and your trunk muscles to engage and stabilize. They're less stable than standing and less stable than sitting down on a bench. So you have this unstable surface that you're pressing from, and that means you're gonna have to access and recruit muscles that you normally wouldn't have to access and recruit in order to get a very stable foundation to press that bar. Again, what are we doing here? We're taking a traditional movement like the barbell press, which you know how to progress week after week by either adding weight or adding reps or decreasing rest period, and we're changing now the stabilization point of that. The other position that I'd like you to try is the Z position. That is seated on the floor with your legs out in front of you. Again, this is great for pressing movements like the Bradford press or the strict press. The Bradford press is where I'm pressing from in front of my shoulders to the back of my shoulders, up and over my head, backwards and forwards. Same thing with the traditional press. We would find ourselves in this seated position on the floor with legs out in front of us. This position is unique. It's gonna force you to have a tremendous amount of thoracic extension when you're actually lifting. It's gonna put your hamstrings in a stretched position as well. So this is gonna test your flexibility. It's gonna demand a lot more out of your core stabilizers, your core flexors, and your trunk. And so when you're in this position and you start pressing, you might find you can't lift as much weight, which again is not a problem. We are here to get stronger over time. So if a new position like the tall kneeling or the Z press forces you to lower your weight down, no big deal. You start at a low weight, and that gives you a tremendous amount of runway to build up and progress over the coming weeks. So give these various movements a try for changing up your base of support. That was principle number 5. Okay, if you liked what you saw today, I'd appreciate it if you gave us a thumbs up below, hit the like button, and also subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss anything that we're bringing to you here in the near future on how to upgrade your training, lifestyle, and nutrition practices to become the best version of yourself that you can be. Now, I've got a training program that you can sign up for. It's called Persist, and it is Functional Bodybuilding's home for everybody that's looking to train for athletic performance, body composition, or if you need a minimalist training program, we've got you covered as well. So be sure to hit the link below. There's a 2-week free trial. You can get in there today and start persisting with us right away. See you next time.